it's a huge honor to have been invited to chair this stellar panel celebrating the work of two giants of African literature and literary studies. So Professor Femi Osofisan, who needs absolutely no introduction, anybody, the most illustrious playwright, poet, critic, and now we find also a novelist. Something's happened to the screen. I can't see you. Ah, and Professor AdelekeAdeeko, star of Yoruba literary scholarship. So we're here to discuss and celebrate Professor Adeeko's translation of Kolera Kolej, which is Osofisan's first novel, published in 1975, and has now been published with Professor Adeeko's translation alongside it in one attractive dual language edition last year. So almost half a century has passed between the first publication of the novel and its appearance now in a new edition and in translation. And I can't emphasize too much the importance of translation into and out of African languages. So this is really a landmark event. So we have a great panel of discussants. I'm not sure if all of them are present. I see Dr. Ajayi, Dr. Shoetan.
Yes, I'm here.
Dr. Bernard. I don't see Gabriel Ayola. Is he here?
No.
And I don't see Akinbiyi, Akinlabi. Is that you? My apologies. Okay. So what I've been told by our supreme leader, Professor Adeeko, is that each of the discussants will have 8 minutes, and then the respondents will have whatever time they feel they need to respond, after which we can open it to discussion from the floor. So let's go in the order that's published in the program and start with Professor Temitope Ajayi.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof, for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but not see you.
Oh yeah, I don't know what's happening to my camera. I mean to my video. I've been trying to get around it, but I'm surprised it's not displaying. But of course, let me just continue with my discussion. Like I said, it's my pleasure to be here with great scholars, on this platform. Yeah, I am Ajayi Temitope Michael. A teacher in the Department of. So I have taken time to actually go through the book, or should I say the books now, given the fact that we have the English version written by Professor Femi Osofisan and the Yoruba version as written or as translated by Professor Adeeko. Now, one thing I found a little bit interesting, one of the things I found a little bit interesting as far as the book is concerned, is something like a claim that Professor Adeeko, made, while I was going through his translation, particularly where he talked about the fact that the book is more like a fiction. Can you hear me, please?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that the book is a fiction. And for me, I find it very difficult to actually, be thinking that it's a fiction, because I came across a lot of things that are actually that depict the kind of society I find myself, the kind of system I find myself. So against that background, it is difficult for me to say categorically or to agree, so to say, with Professor Adeeko that the book is a fiction. If you ask me, I think what I see in the book is a kind of a faction, In other words, it's a book is such that combines elements of fiction and faction. So in view of that, I would like to ask Professor Adeeko to actually confirm or actually to confirm or disprove, my observation that the book is more of a faction than being a fiction. Thank you very much. I think we can move on from there.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Uluwabumi, would you like to step in now?
Okay, now. Ekason, ṣé ẹ̀ ń gbọ́ mi?
Then,
Okay. Mo gbìyànjú láti ṣe ìdánilẹ́kọ̀ọ́ tèmi ní Yorùbá torí pé ìtumọ̀ tí ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n well, mo lérò pé màá lè ṣe gbogbo ẹ̀ ní èdè Yorùbá torí pé àwọn kọ̀ọ̀kan wà tó jẹ́ pé mi ò tíì ní àǹfààní láti tú sí èdè Yorùbá nínú àwọn tí mo fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ lórí, ṣùgbọ́n mo lérò pé níwọ̀nba bóyá bí ogójì sí 100 nínú tí mo fẹ́ sọ á jẹ́ ní èdè Yorùbá. Ṣé gan ni ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n àgbà bàbá fún àbójútó abala àpérò yìí àti ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n AdelekeAdeeko akọ̀nà ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Osofisan. Ẹ ṣé fún àǹfààní tí ẹ fún mi láti kópa nínú àpérò yìí. Now, ojú tí èmi fi wo àwọn ìwé méjèèjì ó ṣe díẹ̀. Mo gba abala tí mo pè àkọlé tí mo fún nǹkan tèmi fẹ́ sọ ni ẹni tó bá yọkùn ní ká gbówó fún, the intersectionality of corruption in Koleeji Onigba Meji. Ojú tí mo fi wò nìyẹn ní àwọn nǹkan tí mo wò torí bí ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n bí ọ̀mọ̀wé Àjàyí ṣe sọ tán sínsìn, ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn nǹkan tó wà ńbẹ̀ ló jẹ́ pé ó bá ojú ayé wa mu, pàápàá jùlọ ojú àmúwáyé àwọn Yorùbá nípa ìbáṣepọ̀, nípa ètò ọrọ̀ ajé, nípa ètò ìṣèlú wọn àti pàápàá jùlọ ẹ̀sìn, tí ó jẹ́ pé ó jẹ́ àwọn nǹkan tí ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n méjèèjì gbé kalẹ̀ nínú ojú ìwé àti ìtumọ̀ ìwé fúnra rẹ̀. Now, àwọn Yorùbá lérò pé ẹni tó bá jọjú tó bá lómi lára pé ó ṣeé fi nǹkan ṣọ́ ju ẹni tó bá rí tẹ́ẹ́rẹ́ lọ. Tí a bá dẹ̀ wò nínú ìwé yẹn, àwọn ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àfàyọ tó wà ní, a lè rí àwọn àfàyọ tó yẹ kó tọ́ka sí irú èrò báyìí nípa ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Gẹ̀dú Yájú tó jẹ́ pé ó ti gbìyànjú láti di ọ̀tọ̀, ṣùgbọ́n tó jẹ́ pé ìrísí lásán ni ó ń dá nítọ̀mọ́, tí kì í ṣe pé bóyá wọ́n sọ pé kò lè ṣe tó fẹ́ jẹ́ kó ṣe, ṣùgbọ́n tó rí pé wọ́n rí gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹ̀sùn tí wọ́n fi kàn nìyẹn tó fi jẹ́ pé wọn ò fi fún un ní àǹfààní láti jẹ oyè tí ó ti lérò láti jẹ lẹ́ẹ̀mẹ́fà ọ̀tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀. Àwọn nǹkan tó dẹ̀ wà lábẹ́ yìí ó wá já sí àwọn nǹkan míì nínú ìwé tó jẹ́ pé ó pọ̀ rẹ̀rẹ̀ bíi ìrẹ́nijẹ, bíi ìjẹgàba, bíi àwọn ìwà ìbàjẹ́ lóríṣiríṣi tó jẹ́ pé ó jẹ nínú ìwé tó jẹ́ pé àti ara àìkàsí àti ìfojú lásán láì wo àwọn ló fa ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn títí dórí àwọn obìnrin gan, ó fi jẹ́ pé aya tún já sí òwò ẹrú ní ìparí. Mo rí pé àwọn nǹkan abala àwùjọ nínú ìwé yẹn ó ṣiṣẹ́ wọnú ara tó jẹ́ pé ó fi já sí ìwà ìbàjẹ́, tó já sí wàhálà àti ìnira àti ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ jàǹbá tó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí kọ́lẹ́ẹ̀jì ṣáájú ìgbà tí wọ́n gba òmìnira òjijì tàbí òmìnira pàjáwìrì, ni wọ́n ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ àwọn àdójúkọ wọ̀nyẹn tàbí ìdojúkọ tó jẹ́ pé padà wá já sí òwò ẹrú níparí, tó ṣeé ṣe kó já sí òwò ẹrú tó níbi tí wọ́n bá lọ. Àwọn nǹkan tí mo tí mo fẹ́ fàyọ ní èmi mọ̀ bóyá ọmọ ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n àgbà Osofisan àti ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n AdelekeAdeeko bóyá wọ́n ní àwọn nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ́kàn nígbà tí wọ́n fi ń ṣe tó fi ń kọ ìwé yẹn àtìgbà tí wọ́n ń ṣe ìtumọ̀ ìwé yẹn pé ṣé wọ́n ro àwọn abala àwùjọ àti àwọn ìwà ìbàjẹ́ tó sodo sínú ẹ̀, ìwà à ń fún ẹnìkan láàyè ju ẹnìkan lọ torí ó mọ àwọn èèyàn, favoritism, ìwà ìjẹgàba tí mo sọ lẹ́kọ̀ọ́, oppression, ìwà owó ẹ̀yìn, bribery, àti oríṣiríṣi àwọn ìwà ìbàjẹ́ tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n ṣàfihàn nínú ìwé yẹn. Mi ìmọ̀ bóyá wọ́n wò pé wọ́n ṣiṣẹ́ wọnú ara, pé kì í ṣe pé wọ́n dá dúró, ṣùgbọ́n wọ́n intersectionality, wọ́n wọ àwọn ohun tó wà lókè. Ó dàbí ẹni tó sọ pé amúkù ẹrù ẹ̀wọ́, ó ní òkè lẹ́wọ̀ ẹ̀wọ̀ ìsàlẹ̀, pé àwọn nǹkan wọ̀nyí tó yẹ pé wà nínú àwùjọ rẹ̀ tó ń ṣiṣẹ́, ṣé wọ́n lérò pé wọ́n kóra jọ láti di ohun ńlá tó padà wá ṣẹlẹ̀ nínú ìwé yẹn ni, àbí wọ́n kàn kọ́ gẹ́gẹ́ bí ó ṣe jẹ́ pé gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìtàn àròsọ tó jẹ́ pé ojú tèmi kàn fi wò nìyẹn. Ìbéèrè tí mo ní nìyẹn. Mo lérò pé gbogbo àwọn tó wà nínú àpérò pé wọ́n gbọ́ nǹkan tí mo gbìyànjú láti sọ. Ẹ ṣeun sà, ẹ ṣeun mà.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni, ẹ pàtó tó ní.
Ẹ káàbọ̀. Thank you very much. Professor Akinlabi, I think I jumped over you by mistake. I'm sorry.
You jumped me by mistake. Oh, you jumped me by mistake.
I jumped over you. I might be new.
Okay. First of all, let me make something very clear, and that is that I see myself as the odd man out here. I'm a theoretical linguist, and so when I was invited to participate in this discussion, I wondered, what would I contribute to a discussion of a novel, being a theoretical linguist? So I said, okay, well, whatever I can contribute, I'll contribute. So I have questions for both authors. Now, first of all, I will look at this and tell you that what I did in understanding, in order to understand this book, is that I replaced the title college with the word colony.
Colony. Okay. Colony.
So I see the motherland as, I mean, they didn't say this in their translations and in the original form, but I see this work as something that where the motherland is the United Kingdom, and it is granting independence to one of its corrupt colonies, and that would be something, given the language in the book, with Okitipupa, with Ibadan, with all kinds of areas in Ibadan, Nigeria. I would say, well, okay, so the motherland is Great Britain, and is the United Kingdom, for example, and the colony is Nigeria. That is what I would say if somebody asked me to say, okay, so what is this all about? And the second thing that I want to address is that I don't think that, pardon me, these are two excellent works of fiction, okay? These are two excellently written novels, okay? Each one has a lot to contribute to literature, but I don't believe that Onigba Meji is a translation of Kolera Kolej. I do not. As a linguist, if somebody were to ask me to do a translation of Kolera Kolej into Yoruba, I would not translate it this way. This is not a direct literary translation of the book. You would agree with me on that. It's not a word-for-word translation of the book. The only parallel between these two works, or well, some of the parallels between these two works, is that it has the same storyline. It has the same plot. Okay? Other than that, there is nothing. The language is completely different. I mean, come on, tell me. Where do you translate the word? Where do you translate the words innuendos, ridiculous, that so that they will become yeyenatu, yanapaja? How does that become that? How does ridiculous and innuendos become yanapaja? Yanapaja is in the matter. So how do they translate to each other? So it's, I would not say that the translation is a translation. It's a separate novel. It's a separate novel that has the same theme, the same plot, the same storyline with the book, with the original that was written by Professor Osofisan. That's the way I see it. So now, the criticism that I have comes with Professor Osofisan's plot. If you look at page 28 of the text that's been sold downstairs and the text that we were given to read, the same event that happened on page 28 happened on page 58 of the same book. What is the thing that I'm referring to? Before the college was granted independence, when they were going to elect a new vice chancellor to head the college, after the election, 3 people wore hoods on page 27. And they went to the house of the new vice chancellor, the vice chancellor elect. And the 3 of them were Professor Gedunyaju, Professor, what is his name? Head of political science. That's Professor Paramole. Okay. And Ijimere. The 3 of them went to the house of the vice chancellor. They wore hoods. They made him sign an agreement. That was on page 27, 28. They made him sign an agreement. And the agreement was that they would be appointed into the cabinet of the new vice chancellor on page 28. Okay. On page 58, which is the second section, after Bele Jayan was appointed or was elected the vice chancellor, they again went to the same place. Okay, and what did they go there to do? They went there to assassinate him. And the reason that I said that what happened on page 28, what happened on page 58 is a repeat of what happened on page 28 is because they were again offered the same cabinet posts that they were offered on page 28. So my question that I was going to pose to Professor Osofisan was this a slip of the pen? And you're not far away from that either. So the question is, why was that scene repeated on page 58, chapter 6 of the second part. Okay, but unfortunately, he's not here. So if anyone can answer that question, I'll be happy to respond further to them. Those are the two questions that I had. So is this a real translation? 2, why is this problem in the plot?
Thank you, Professor Kinlabi, for these very probing questions. I'm looking forward to hearing the response. So our final discussant is Professor Olusegun Sowetan. Over to you.
Well, maybe he muted himself. Oh, he has a slide. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can.
We do. Yes, we can.
Let me try to do this. I think let me stop sharing this first, and then so you can see me. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I said the title of my presentation is Kolera Kolej, Translation in a Fagwanian Context. My approach in this presentation is not too theoretical nor heavily critical. Instead, I'm interested in the creativity of both authors and seek to understand the process of wordsmithing that produced two texts, one derived from the other. However, let me quickly add here that the derivation is not a wholesale lifting of sentence for sentence or paragraph for paragraph. It is, So it is, however, a derivation from a primary text to a new reader, which retains the source thematic preoccupation. My approach is to share my notes with you so that we can make sense of the creative universe of both authors together. The plan is to discuss intertextuality, coinage, and different fiber materials or stylistic elements in the translated work. I will also focus on tonality. By tone, I'm not referring to the diacritic marks, but the intonation of the translator. Now, what do I mean by that? Coinage. So let me start with the idea of coinage. So hopefully you can read this. So for me, I argue that this translation is not the typical way translators will translate a text, in the sense that it is not a sentential translation, neither it is paragraph or paragraph translation. But what we have here is a derivation from a source text, but which produces something new. For example, we have on page 1, Onigba Meji fìdí sọlẹ̀ sí Koleeji. Àfi bí ìdánọ̀rọ̀ náà bẹ́, àjàkálẹ̀ àrùn ń pa ọ̀pọ̀ èèyàn bí ẹni ń pa itú, tí òkìkí rẹ̀ sì ń kàn káàkiri láti Ghana títí lọ dé Gabon. Kò ì pé ìtàdógún, akápò kú, wọ́n gbé e sin. Kójú máa ríbi ni ifá tí òyìnbó olórí oko dá, ó tọrọ gáfárà láti lọ fọgbọ́n kún ọgbọ́n ní ìlú òkèèrè. Ó họ láìbojú wẹ̀yìn wo ọ̀gọ̀rọ̀ akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ tí òkú wọn ti di sísun látàrí pé gbogbo ìtẹ́ ti kún. Bá a ṣe gba tí kò fẹ́ sọ ìmẹ̀lẹ̀ ẹ̀sìn ló dáwọ́ pọ̀ ṣe bàbá mi sìnkú nígbà tí iná àjálù yìí ń jó kọjá orí kókó. That is from AdelekeAdeeko, Professor AdelekeAdeeko. Now, this is the English source. Suddenly, without warning, though the epidemic had been earlier reported in neighboring countries and had even made several deaths in Ghana and Gabon, without warning, cholera struck the college. Within the first 2 weeks, the bursar was dead and buried. The first chancellor, an Englishman, prudently went on study leave, and the corpses of a few hundred students were burnt near the college chapel under the joint supervision of the professor of religious studies and the college. So this is the source from Osofisan. And what I'm trying to say here is that in the excerpt above, Professor AdelekeAdeeko coined two words to replace existing terms in the target language, Yoruba language. For example, instead of settling for Ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n kò fẹ́ sọ ẹ̀kọ́ ìmọ̀ ẹ̀sìn, which has it's a standard translation of religious studies, he coined ìmẹ̀lẹ̀ ẹ̀sìn as a technical term that could be used instead of ẹ̀kọ́ ẹ̀sìn. The coinage undoubtedly is a brilliant one in the sense that it reflects the capacity of the target language to transpose organic meanings while obeying law of brevity. Ìmẹ̀lẹ̀ ẹ̀sìn follows the rules of nominalization in Yoruba language. It's a derived word that aptly captures the technicality of studying beyond the normative interpretation of reading. The syntactic formation is explained thus below. So what I'm trying to say here is this. There's a sense of coinage here that gives heft to this kind of translation. So what we have is sorry. Okay. So what we have instead is we have imo elesin. When you break down imelesin, it's a nominalization. It means mo elesin. My argument here is that there is a word for that already. The question is, why would Professor AdelekeAdeeko settle for imo elesin? So that to me is a coinage that
your voice is gone.
hello?
Okay.
Yeah.
Your voice is gone. Well.
I think I like
I'll assume, yeah. Well,
Can you hear me?
bye-bye. Okay.
Okay. So, my argument here is that imo elesin, so imelesin, is a new word and it's a coinage which Professor AdelekeAdeeko tried to created in order for us to have a technical language instead of ẹ̀kọ́ nípa ẹ̀sìn. Ẹ̀kọ́ nípa ẹ̀sìn talks about study about religion, but instead is giving us a new word here. And that coinage for me shows a capacity, is his ability or his own way of telling us that even though this is a translation, but actually this is a new text by itself. And there are many examples in that, in that translated work. So for me, I see coinage as one of the many ways, many of the many devices that we have in that book. Okay, so a contextual, however, now moving forward, I argue here that by searching for imelesin, that is the possession or a nuanced, refined knowledge of religion, the translator creates portable technical terms speakers and writers of Yoruba literature and language text can adopt. However, we can debate its usefulness or otherwise in the context of existing meta-language. My question then is imelesin, fitting the existing meta-language of Yoruba language? So Yoruba language as meta-language, and luckily for us, we have Professor Akelabi here. So, and, scholars have really worked on Yoruba meta-language. So the question then is there just a positioning here, or is this coinage necessary, or in a way, just, to show a sense of highfalutin language that, hey, I can speak the language too, I too can speak, to quote, from title of our eloquence, professor here. That is because of time. Now I will go to the other literary device I think that Professor AdelekeAdeeko deployed in this translation. So which is what I call poetic language. A contextual analysis of the translation work will reveal a Faguanian orientation that occasioned a manner of speaking and describing events. Let us, for example, analyze the address of the interim vice chancellor of the college. where Professor Adeeko imbibes a speaking pattern that echoes the dense, comical, and lyrical narration common to Fagwan text. That is what I'll reproduce here. Èèmọ́gbọ̀nà ìbúrú yọ sí gbogbo kó wá tó wà níkàlẹ̀ àtèyí tó wà ní dúró. Lójijì ní fìdí hẹ́ṣẹ́ sí méjì gbàù ló fi àgbọ̀nsàlẹ̀ ṣàpẹpẹ ìkàwé. Kí àwọn onífọ́tò àti akọ̀ròyìn tó kó èròjà síta láti ṣe àkọsílẹ̀ àrà tuntun tí wọ́n rò pé fìdí hẹ́ńdá gọ́in ní kò fẹ́ sọ tuntun àní kò fẹ́ tún ti nàró padà. Ó ń ṣán apá sókè sódò bí ìgbà tí pẹ́pẹ́yẹ fẹ́ gbéra ńlẹ̀. Àwọn onífọ́tò dáná bolẹ̀, iná ń ṣe ṣàràṣàrà lójú wọn, fìdíhẹ́ ń gbé bọ́tò tuntun jáde ni. Then moving forward, fìdíhẹ́ fi iṣó ńlá kan sí, ó dúpùú lọ́gán, lálá lẹ́rùkú ń tu, bí ìgbóná ń gbóru ìgbọ̀nsẹ̀ tí ń ṣàn jáde láti ibi bọ́bọ́ tiribọ́ fìdíhẹ́, bẹ́ẹ̀ ló ń ya láti ibi bọ̀bọ̀ tiribọ̀, bó ti ń ṣe lákáláká ló ń ṣe làkàlàkà bí wòlíì tó wà nínú ẹ̀mí. Now, my argument here is this. When we pay attention to what Professor AdelekeAdeeko is trying to do here, we can see a dense poetic language that combines series of stylistic, literary styles, or probably literary materials, like onomatopoeic idiophone. So, for example, we can see that where it talks about that is an onomatopoeic idiophone that resonates with the, that tries to, in a way, describe to us the action of the professor, the interim professor, knocking a shin against the lectern. So then we can also see that in that particular text, in that one paragraph, we also have what we call tonal counterpoint, whereby Professor AdelekeAdeeko plays with the tone. For example, Bobo Tiribo and Bobo Tiribo. So whereby both the high tone, mi, 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 and do, 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 acts in the counterpoint to give us an aesthetic value to the descriptive, balance of that story being told. And laka laka and laka laka. So these are instances of, ways that I thought that Professor AdelekeAdeeko created something new out of something old. So, and I can go on and on, talking about the newness of the translated work. But here's my take on that. So, because I could see here that Professor AdelekeAdeeko, deviated from the norm of translation. And in that instance, I have two questions for him. So I ask, is translation always a parchment, a palimpsest of the source text, or a new creation and in and of itself all the time? Because what we do know about adaptation and translation is that they are often, a parchment or palimpsest of the source that is superimposed on the other. But in this case, we don't see that kind of superimposition. So then the question then is this always the case when works are translated, or is it just a kind of creative, energy that Professor AdelekeAdeeko brought into the study of translation, and in this case, Yoruba studies? My second question is, how do you resolve the politics of authorship? I work on author films, and one of the questions that we run into when we talk about author cinema and adaptation is ownership. So in this instance, how is that tension resolved? So who is the owner of the text? Professor Femi Osofisan or yourself, Professor AdelekeAdeeko? So these are the two questions that I have for you. And quickly, let me add this. I appreciate the language usage in the text, but I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think the translation is a bit heavy and slow to read. So its flow is not, it does not flow. So, and this is the instance of me thinking that, Professor AdelekeAdeeko is imbibing a Fagwanian tradition, so that is always very heavy and that gives credence to a traditional way of addressing the public or the reader. Thank you.
Professor Ghana,
Who's speaking?
I think, and you
I
know,
hear somebody speaking. I can't see who it is.
oh, that's the other
Professor-
one.
Oh, it's the other room coming through the wall.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so Professor Shoetan, thank you for that very well prepared commentary. We've got a lot of questions now for Professor Adeeko.
Shaking down.
I think we'll go to Professor Adeeko's response to the discussants, and then we'll open to the floor, if that's okay. And we'll ask for your own comments. We
Yes.
also have some comments in the Q&A, which we can open up and discuss after we've heard from the translator. So, Prof. Adeeko, over to you.
Thank you, Eshego Ojogbon Baba and Ojogbon Akilabi, who is with whom I'm sharing the table here. Can you hear me online? Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes,
you.
yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, I thank you a lot. I thank you for putting this together and taking your time to read the book and then post these questions in your discussion. Some of the questions are similar. For example, on authorship, the issue of authorship is not too far from the issue Professor Kilabi raised on saying that this is Koleeji Onigba Meji. It is not a translation of Kolera Kolej. It's not too far from it. But before I answer these questions directly, let me first say that I see myself as following in the tradition of Olanipekwe. I don't know if we remember people of a certain age in southwestern Nigeria who went to school and had to read Yoruba as part of school curriculum in the late 1960s, between, let me say, 1965 and 1970. I went to high school in 1970. And even I started high school in 1970. And some years of high school, I wrote Olanipekwe, so Teledala Share Tiroja. There are about 5 from Latin, from Greece, from ancient Greece, and from Rome. Professor of classics, Yoruba. I read his translations. I saw what he did, and I was impressed by them as a kid, and I'm still impressed by them as an adult. So it was his translation style that I adopted. He actually said, also in the preface to each book, the late Olanipekwe says this is not a one-to-one translation. Kí àìgbọ́ èdè Latin tàbí àgbọ́ èdè Gíríkì kó má jẹ́ ìdènà láti gbádùn àwọn ìtàn olóyin mọ́mọ́ wọ̀nyí. That's mo rántí nǹkan tí Olanipekwe sọ ni kí àìgbọ́ Latin tàbí àìgbọ́ Gíríkì kí ó má jẹ́ ìdènà fún ìgbádùn àwọn ìtàn olóyin mọ́mọ́ yìí. You can say that's the theory, that's what guided. I had that in the back of my mind when I was translating Osofisan. And 2, the other issue to go fi kalẹ̀. Àárín COVID ní 20 àìsàn kòró ní 2020. Kayode Otunbani is here. We live together in Ohio, so you will remember this. Olóòtú department mi ní èdè English nígbà yẹn Robin Williams, narratologist lòun náà. Olókọ̀wé sí gbogbo wa pé ǹjẹ́ àwọn ìwé wà tá a lè fi ránṣẹ́ ká fi ránṣẹ́ sí àwọn alumni wa pé àwọn ìwé tó lè kà lásìkò àjàkálẹ̀ àrùn yìí. Wọ́n ní tíjẹ́ bá pẹ́ ìyẹn ò lè. Èmi bá kó àwọn ìwé márùn-ún kalẹ̀ náà ìwé tí mo Kolera Kolej ló wà lórí ẹ̀ fún mi. Lẹ́yìn tí mo wá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ṣe ǹjẹ́ so tí mo ṣe mú yẹn jáde ni wípé mo mú Kolera Kolej lédè òyìnbó kì í ṣe torí òyìnbó nìkan ṣùgbọ́n imagination ni mo ṣe lè di. I wanted Ohio State alum of English department and the public and our friends of the department to experience Yoruba imagination in English. Again, I do not know how that is possible, but that's what I had in my mind. That by asking them to read this book about an epidemic that broke out on a college campus, that was so world-changing that it got them independence they didn't ask for. And you know, COVID in 2020 was changing the world around us completely. For those of us who teach in colleges anywhere, particularly in the US, you know how that thing turned our world upside down. So I thought that's a good way to make them imagine the book written in 1975, Yoruba imagination, but in English. Because that book, as far as I'm concerned, is filled with Yoruba imagination. Fago Anio, Okediji Nio, T.A. Ladelenio, Ibo Oloko, Lagbondoko. Yeah. Tabawo gbogbo ẹ̀ ló papọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ gbódògàn yìí lọ́dọ̀ ìsánú ọ̀run ayé rèé èjìgbèdè lọ́dọ̀ ìsánú ọ̀run gbogbo tẹ́bá gbogbo àwọn kì í ṣe Fágúnwà nìkan ló wà nínú ìwé yẹn gbogbo àwọn àròsọ nínú àwọn òwe Yorùbá ló pèsè sínú ìwé yẹn ara nǹkan tó mú ìwé yẹn nìyẹn. Ìkẹta ni wípé nígbà yẹn mo yìí ṣiṣẹ́ lórí táwọn olóyìnbó ń pè ní events, the idea of the event in philosophy and also in narratives. How do you theorize an event? Ṣé pé èdè Yorùbá tí mo rí ń gbà ẹ ní ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀. Tẹ́bádẹ̀ wo Kolera Kolej ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ pọ̀ lówó yẹn. Ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ ni ohun tó jẹ́ pé èèyàn ò kò dédé bẹ́ẹ̀. A kì í ṣẹ̀dá ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀. Tàbá ṣẹ̀dá ẹ̀, ó di nǹkan mi, ó di àṣeyẹ nìyẹn. Tàbá ti ń ṣe, ó di ọdún nìyẹn. Ṣùgbọ́n tí ò bá kí ń ṣọdún, kì í ṣàṣeyẹ, kì í ṣe ìnáwó, ó dẹ̀ dédé bẹ́ sílẹ̀ lójijì. Ó ti di ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ yẹn. Báwo la ṣe lè pè yẹn ní Yorùbá? Irú èdè wo la lè lò? Ọ̀nà wo la lè túmọ̀ ẹ̀ sí? Ṣé ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ lórí? Ṣé ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ nídìí? Ṣé ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ ní okùnfà? A lè sọ pé ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ ló kùnfà, ṣùgbọ́n lẹ́yìn tó bá ti ṣẹlẹ̀ la máa wá okùnfà ẹ̀. Ní tá bá sì sọ ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ di ìtàn, a ní orí ẹ̀dà, ìdí ẹ̀dà. Ìyẹn yàtọ̀ sí nítorí lóyìnbó ń pè ní causation lóyìnbó. Ó yàtọ̀ sí orí àbí ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀. Ìdí la máa pè ìdí a máa fi ìdí jókòó ni. Orí yàtọ̀ sẹ́sẹ̀. Àwọn ni ó ń tọ́ ẹsẹ̀. So báwo báwo ni gbogbo yẹn ṣe hàn nínú ìtàn Yorùbá ló fẹ́ fi hàn nínú ìwé yìí. Ìkẹrin ni ewì tí tẹbárọ́tì nínú ìtàn yẹn ọ̀gbẹ́ni eléwì kan wà mẹ́ tó fẹ́ràn ajájọ́ èèyàn lọ. Mọ̀ pé Ṣóyínká ló fọgbó bú bẹ̀. Ìwọ́n kò sọ pé Ṣóyínká ló ń bú. Tẹ́bá ka ìwé yẹn ẹ̀rí pé Ṣóyínká ló ń bú. Ṣé mọ̀ kí májámájá ni Ṣóyínká ló ti pẹ́ tó ti ń ṣiṣẹ́ májámájá. Ọ̀gbẹ́ni Akéwì yẹn fẹ́ràn ajá ìjú ènìyàn lọ nínú ìwé yẹn. Ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n náà dẹ̀ ni. Ṣùgbọ́n Akéwì dẹ̀ ni. Tẹ́ bá rí àwọn ewì tí ọ̀gbẹ́ni yẹn máa ń kọ, kì í ṣe ewì Túbọ̀sún Ládàpọ̀, kì í ṣe ewì Lárẹ̀wájú Adépọ̀jù. Ewì yẹn yá, ṣùgbọ́n báwo la ṣe fẹ́ túmọ̀ yẹn sí èdè Yorùbá? Tó jẹ́ pé à ń mú àwọn ìlò èdè tuntun wọ inú èdè Yorùbá tí ó sì ní tako ìṣe àti àṣà ìwé kíkọ àti ewì kíkọ lédè Yorùbá. Mo fẹ́ túmọ̀ ewì tí ò ní jẹ́ à ń da ewì gẹ́gẹ́ bí Gòròkè Ajíṣafẹ́ 1929 ló lo èdè ẹ̀ tó ní à ń da ewì ni. Mi ò fẹ́ kọ́ à ń da ewì, ṣùgbọ́n mo fẹ́ kí ìtàn bí ewì Osofisan ó jẹ mọ́ ìṣe àti àṣà ìwé kíkọ lédè Yorùbá. So àwọn nǹkan tó gbogbo àwọn oríṣiríṣi tó lúrú àti ṣàpà tí mo láti papọ̀ sínú ìwé yẹn nìyẹn jẹ́ pé tó wá di Kolera Kolej tó di college Onigba Meji. Ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Ajayi ní the book is not as fictional as AdelekeAdeeko claims. Lójú tèmi ìtàn aláròsọ ṣùgbọ́n tó jẹ́ bí ìtàn olówe ni. Ìtàn olówe gbogbo pé mo ka Moroke Diedra Lapin láti bí èdè tó ti kọ́ báyìí ní Madison ló ṣe nǹkan nípa ìtàn olówe. Àṣà kan wà nìbàdàn jẹ́ pé ẹ máa pòwe ṣùgbọ́n ìtàn ló máa fi túmọ̀ ẹ̀. Ṣùgbọ́n tẹ́ bá wo ìwé èdè ìpérí tí Bámgbóṣé kọ allegory nínú èdè ìpérí ìtàn olówe náà túmọ̀ ẹ̀ sí. Lójú tèmi ìtàn olówe ni Kolera Kolej. Aláròsọ ni ṣùgbọ́n ó ń pòwe òwe yẹn sì já sóríṣiríṣi ọ̀nà. A sì mọ̀ wípé òwe rèé a kì í ní ìtumọ̀ òwe máa ń pọ̀ lóríṣiríṣi ọ̀nà. So ìtàn aláròsọ ni ó sì tún jẹ́ ìtàn olówe. Ìtàn olówe yẹn ni òwe yẹn ni mo rò wípé ni mo tàn mọ́ wípé ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Akínlábí ń tọ́ka sí wípé kọ́lọ́nì ni ṣe college. Lóòótọ́ ni òwe tó ń pa òwe kọ́lọ́nì ló ń pa kì í ṣe ìtàn tó kàn bẹ́ sílẹ̀ lásán ó nídìí. Mo fara mọ́ yẹn mo gbà wípé lóòótọ́ a lè pè ní kọ́lọ́nì ṣùgbọ́n ó ṣòro fún mi láti pè ní satire. Kì í ṣe ìtàn aláwòmọ́ táwọn Moroke tó ń pè ní realism no better language Bámgbóṣé. Kì í ṣe aláwòmọ́ aláròsọ pátápátá ni. Lóòótọ́ Ghana ó sọ pé Ghana ó sọ Gabon ṣùgbọ́n kò sí ìlú tó ń jẹ́ Kolera Kolej, kò sí ìlú tó ń jẹ́ orílẹ̀ ìyá, kò sí ìlú tó ń jẹ́ mother country. Ṣùgbọ́n èmi wá yí yẹn sí orílẹ̀ ìyá dípò orílẹ̀ ìyá. Orílẹ̀ ìyá gangan ni mother country jẹ́ nínú òwe yìí. Ṣùgbọ́n tá a bá pè lórílẹ̀ ìyá ìyá ti jágara jù. Ó sọ̀rọ̀ pé ní orílẹ̀ ìyá. Ẹ̀wọ̀n ni wọ́n tẹ́ bá mọ̀ rántí orin tó jẹ́ òye lánàá. Ó ní wàá jìyà wàá jẹ́wọ́ ìyá. So àwọn nǹkan tó wà lọ́kàn mi nìyẹn tí kò yí again àwọn ní àyímọ̀ ìpọ̀lọ́pọ̀ ká máa yí náà ni. So àyímọ̀ kó bá pọ̀lọ́pọ̀ ni mo fi àwọn ìtumọ̀ ẹ ṣe. Ẹ tọ́ka sí ibi ridiculous pé tẹ́ bá wo ojú ewé yẹn ẹ rí àwọn ìfọ̀rọ̀ṣeré ìyànà ìpájà ẹjọ́ pé ó pè wú lẹ́jọ́ ẹjọ́ tí kì í ṣe òótọ́ ẹ jẹ́ kí n wò bóyá mo lè ní ìpáyà. Nígbà tí ó ní ẹ̀sùn ìpáyà lélẹ́yìí o ẹ̀sùn yẹ̀yẹ́ ni yẹ̀yẹ́ ìpáyà ìyẹn ni wọ́n ọ̀nà wọn láṣẹ lè papọ̀ mọ́ nítawọn láti júwe nítorí wà lọ́kọ̀ ẹ̀ àti èsì táwọn èèyàn fún ni wọ́n pààyàn pọ̀ mọ́ yẹ̀yẹ́ náà tù. Òun náà ló dá pọ̀rọ́sọ́ kọ̀fẹ́sẹ̀ náà ló dá yẹ̀yẹ́ sílẹ̀. Ojú máa fi ìyẹ̀nà ìpájà kún àti ìyànà ìlọ́jà lọ́jà pájà yẹ̀yẹ́ ìpáyà ṣàwọn ìfọ̀rọ̀ṣeré ni mo papọ̀ sílẹ̀. Tẹ́ bá wo nínú ìwé yẹn náà Osofisan ní ridiculous ridikini àwọn tó wà ń bẹ̀ náà ń dáhùn pé ridiculous báwo la ṣe yíyẹ sí Yorùbá yẹ̀yẹ́ náà tún so ọgbọ́n ìtumọ̀ ni mo dá síbẹ̀ yẹn. Òótọ́ ni nǹkan tẹ́ sọ ṣùgbọ́n mo ń ṣàlàyé àwọn ìdí mi ò ṣàlàyé yẹn kún lẹ́kùnrẹ́rẹ́ nínú àròsọ nínú èrò olùtúmọ̀. Mi ò fẹ́ kí èrò olùtúmọ̀ di ìwé ní ìlọ́tọ̀. Mo ti kọ ṣápítà 2 lórí ìwé yìí lọ́tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ lédè òyìnbó. Mo wá fẹ́ tún sẹ̀yìn di mi tó fẹ́ sọ èrò olùtúmọ̀ di ṣápítà 3. N tó fà á nìyẹn. Ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Ṣóyẹ̀tàn ìbéèrè tẹ bí mi mo ti dáhùn Dr. Bernard ẹni tó bá yọkùn ní kẹ́ gbówó fún nínú Kolera Kolej tí ò yọkùn lọ́wọ́ gbówó fún wọ́n dẹ̀ mọ̀ ẹbí wọ́n ní àkìrí ran ọmọ tí kò gbọ́n ẹ̀rọ pọ̀ nínú ìwé yìí táwọn olóyìnbó ń pè ní irony ìwé yìí ẹ̀rọ gidi ni wọ́n ní àkìrí ran ọmọ tí kò gbọ́n tó dábàá ní kọ́mọ tí kò gbọ́n lọ bẹ́ sómi kò nímọ̀ kẹ́ ẹ̀rọ ni ó náà máa lọ bẹ́ sómi àpárá ẹ̀ nínú ìwé yìí àwọn ọmọ tí ò gbọ́n pọ̀ wọ́n ń bẹ́ sómi lójoojúmọ́ náà para wọn so bí òótọ́ ni pé ẹni tó bá yọkọ̀ ní kẹ́ ẹ gbówó fún ṣùgbọ́n Ọ̀ṣọ́fisán wá yí kí ní ẹ̀ padà ike ẹ̀rí pé yunifásitì ilé ọgbọ́n yunifásitì pẹ̀lú ẹ̀ka àwọn ọ̀dọ́gbọ́n pọ̀ sí láyé àwọn ọgbọ́n náà wá yẹ òmùgọ̀ tí wọ́n gbọ̀ngàn ṣújú wọn ṣe à ń sọ̀rọ̀ fágbó alẹ́ ẹ̀kọ́ àwọn ọgbọ́n ní ìlú Èdìdà rẹ ní Kolera Kolej kálẹ̀ lè pè ní ìlú Èdìdà rẹ ni láì jẹ́ pé àwọn ọmọ fágbó wa pèèyàn lẹ́jọ́ oúnjẹ ká pe ìwé yìí ní ẹ pé ìwé kọ́lẹ́jì Èdìdà rẹ ni kì í ṣe kọ́lẹ́jì ilé ọgbọ́n rárá lọ́gbọ́n lórí wọ́n mọ̀wé o ìkan lóun lọ yunifásitì kó ń tàgòrà kò sí ibi tó ṣàtì kò sí yunifásitì kankan kó ń tàgòrà ṣùgbọ́n bọ́n ṣe kọ́ nínú ìwé ní ẹ pé ó lọ láfíàjì ó lọ kó ń tàgòrà kò sí ibi tó lọ Dublin kan náà ó lọ Dublin ní Ireland so ẹ̀rí pé gbogbo àdàpọ̀ yẹn ló jẹ́ kí ìtàn yẹn dùn ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n ṣó ẹ̀tàn gbogbo àkíyèsí tẹ́ ṣe òótọ́ ni ìbéèrè tẹ́ bèrè mo fẹ́ dáhùn any is translation a concept P-U-N-C-E-P-T is that what they're saying what they're asking concept or is, actually tó bá jẹ́ tí ò bá jẹ́ lérò pé concept yẹn gan láti inú Gregory ní tó ti ń ka Derrida tó wà lọ́kọ̀ ẹ̀mí kankan ni pé every translation is a concept P-U-N-C-E-P-T it's a conceptual work that I translate it's a new text, no doubt. Every translation is a new text, and I think you should revel in that. And in that, I'm not creating anything new. I was just following AdelekeAdeeko in his work in the way he did Yoruba translation of Greek classics and Latin classics. Ikeji, how do you resolve the problem of authorship? Osofisan ló kọ̀wé olùtúmọ̀ lásán lè ní. Mo gba àṣẹ lọ́wọ́ Osofisan gbà wá láàyè. Kò gba kọ́bọ̀ lọ́wọ́ mi o. Kò dẹ̀ lò pé ó gba kọ́bọ̀ àwọn publisher náà kò tí gbowó lọ́wọ́ àwọn tí publisher ti sanwó fún mi. Pé dẹ̀rù kó tí sanwó fún Osofisan. Ṣùgbọ́n nínú àdéhùn tá a tọwọ́ bọ̀, Osofisan ló níwèé olùtúmọ̀ lè ní. Èmi kò sáré náà jiyàn ní rárá fún lọ́kàn tèmi o kò sí wà wọn inú ẹ̀ Osofisan ló kọ̀wé ẹ̀ ìwé kan túmọ̀ ẹ̀ sí èdè Yorùbá ni. The translation does not flow. Yes, I agree with you. Láwọn bìkan àwọn èdè yẹn ó wà stilted bí ọ̀rọ̀ àwọn olóyìnbó stilted language. I agree completely. There is some stiltedness in some parts. But every translator is a betrayer. Every translator is a traitor. So àwọn ìṣòro kan wà tó jẹ́ pé àwọn nǹkan kan wà ní kò sí tá bá ti yí èdè kan sí èdè míì kò sí nǹkan tá lè ṣe sí ìbáàjẹ́ ìjẹ́ láti inú àṣà kan náà bó jẹ́ pé àṣà kan náà ní Yorùbá àti tí Osofisan kọ àti àṣà kan náà ní AdelekeAdeeko túmọ̀ ìwé yẹn sí tá bá ti lò láti inú èdè kan sínú èdè míì èdè ti wọ̀ èdè ti dé mọ́lẹ̀ pé kò sí nǹkan tá a lè ṣe sí kó má sí yẹ kó má gbogbo àwọn àkíyèsí tẹ́ pè sí yẹ ó ṣe pàtàkì èrò mi ni pé ẹlòmíì àtúnkọ míì tẹ́ bá gẹ́gẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan ara ìṣòro tó wà ní èdè Yorùbá lẹ́nu a lè ta ìwé yìí ní Yorùbá nìkan a ní èrò àti fi èdè òyìnbó yẹn sí tẹ́lẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ ṣùgbọ́n gbàtà bá àwọn Bookcraft Bankole Ọláyẹmí nìbàdàn ó ní kò sẹ́ni tó máa rà á àfi tó bá lò ó skul ó ní kò sẹ́ni tó máa rà á ó ní tá a bá fi òyìnbó sẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ kan a lè fi òyìnbó bí gẹ́gẹ́ bí èrò tí tẹ́bílẹ̀ paramọ́ ó ní tá a bá fi òyìnbó sí ó ní tá a bá torí òyìnbó ra ká Yorùbá ká torí Yorùbá ká ká òyìnbó ojú pa tí méjèèjì fi papọ̀ lọ ọgbọ́n àti ta Yorùbá a ṣe fi òyìnbó sẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ kò sẹ́lẹ̀ ó sọ olóǹtẹ̀wé lòun òǹtàwé sí lòun ìwé tí ọ̀run bá ó ní àfi tí máa mọ tá bá mọ èèyàn tó máa rẹ́dí láti kà sí wo tá bá gbé àwọn èèyàn ní kọmíṣánná kan àbí àwọn permanent secretary kan tó máa jẹ́ kí wọ́n bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí kàláwọn skul ó ní bá a ṣe lè tà nìyẹn ní tó fà á nìyẹn tí pé ká fi pa méjèèjì pọ̀ sójú kan lójú tèmi ìyẹn ò dáa fún ìlọsíwájú ṣùgbọ́n àyọgbé ajájò kí láá jẹ kájá tó yan oúnjẹ mi ṣe fara mọ́ kan fi Yorùbá sẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ kan kan fi èdè òyìnbó sẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ kan nìyẹn màá dúró báyìí mo dúpẹ́ lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀ gbogbo àkíyèsí tẹ́ ṣe nípa ìwé yìí kẹ́sì máa ràn wọ́n kẹ́ máa rán àwọn èèyàn létí kọ́ lọ rà á ní kọ́ kà ní Yorùbá náà tẹ̀ ní kálẹ̀ ìbò ẹ ṣe.
Prof, thank you for that. Thank you for that very rich and revealing discussion of what actually happens when you try to translate. It's really an amazing undertaking, I think.
I know.
Some people, I would think that you chose a very difficult thing to translate. I remember Professor Akinwumi Shola, when he translated Death and the King's Horseman, he said it was like bringing it back into its original language, as if it had been written in Yoruba and then somehow had migrated into English, and he was just restoring it to its original Yoruba-ness. But I doubt if you would be feeling like saying that about Femi Osofisan's text, because it seems to me to have so many things in it that would be a conundrum. How are you going to translate this? Every point along the way, you had to make decisions, difficult decisions, creative decisions that required problems that required creative solutions. So every translation is an interpretation, and you're also inviting the reader to do further interpretation. When you say it's Iton Lo way, what is the way? It has to be interpreted by the hearer. It has to be applied to something. So you're inviting the reader to participate in the process of translation. And I think it's just fantastic the way you've brought this out, both in your translation and in your discussion of the translation. So I want to thank you very much for this great contribution.
So can I say one more thing briefly? I want in the English section, they speak Pidgin English. Yeah. How do you translate Pidgin English into Yoruba? I use Ijebu. Ijebu, Osofisan happens to be Ijebu. I happen to be Ijebu. So wherever they speak Pidgin in English and in the English version, I use Ijebu. So it's totally unintelligible. For example, some parts in Ijebu completely unintelligible to those who cannot read the Ijebu language in the book. So thanks.
I hear somebody.
Yes, somebody wants to say something.
Okay.
I think it's question and answer.
Somebody in the audience.
Yeah.
We have several questions in the Q&A, all by somebody called Anonymous Attendee. And then we have another one from Abimbola Dunia. Has Dr. Adeeko thought of making this book into an audio material? I would love to listen to it. That's a great suggestion.
It is going to be discussing this book, particularly because of recent contemporary health and political issues in Nigeria, though this book is also relevant to other countries in Africa. However, my question is, why is this book published about a year ago so difficult to buy? Well, that's not your fault.
Yeah, I can answer briefly. Bookcraft doesn't have any agreement with Amazon or online distributors outside of Nigeria because they charge, and Amazon will take 1/3 of the sales. So that it's not profitable for Bookcraft to sell on Amazon. But you can order at Konga or Jumia from Nigeria. So it's available online on Konga and Jumia in Nigeria, but not on Amazon because of the commission rate. It's too high.
The second question is, the commentator saying cholera cannot be translated as Onigba Meji is unsure on the thing of their linguistic competence. Uncertain of their linguistic competence. What does that mean? Oh, it's a comment. Okay. Third comment says, on that question of repetition, there is in fact no repetition at all. But anybody can read even misread meanings into satirical piece of work that was addressed to a particular point of the college history. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. AdelekeAdeeko thought of making this book into an audio material. I would love to listen to it.
Actually, that's a project that I thought of, but I do not know if there is audio. You know, that's also another authorship, another permission. I would like to read this book, like, for example, like audio feel, those audio book distribution panels, platforms. I think this book would do well on that.
Yes, it will.
I think it will. Yeah.
This is a great panel, and I hope to see more of it in the future conferences. Has Dr. AdelekeAdeeko considered making an audio version of this book? It's the same question.
Exactly. I would love to see Dr. Officer's permission.
Yeah.
But I'll have to ask him, and I think he will support it.
Well,
thank you. My name is Henry Koleeji from Oyilefe. This is a very great panel. I think I don't speak Yoruba the way you people speak it, and that's why I think I want to ask a question. Possibly, when you were doing your translation, do you have a set of people in mind that this book is for them to read? Because if you take it out, because the little things I listen to from I don't read it here, I may not be able to read them. I know I'm from Eastern Yoruba, so we don't speak Yoruba the way it's spoken around here. So that is my question: that why is it that those words, they are so deep thoughts in terms of thinking about Yoruba ways of saying things that may not be outside, may not be known immediately, that someone may also need a translator to also understand this type of Yoruba. So that's the first thing I want to ask, sir. Thank you, sir.
It's a very complex question. But this is my attitude towards Yoruba literary tradition. It's like any other literature. Yoruba literary tradition is deep. We always believe that if it is Yoruba, it must be obvious. No. That is Yoruba, that we speak Yoruba, does not. Reading is different from listening. This is like I teach American kids, I teach American adults, I should put it that way. Literature does not, I teach American literature, I teach literature to American students. They still have to, it's different from the way they speak at home. That's why we study literature, that's why we study reading. So, yes, it's different, but this is literary. The same thing with Fagua. So that's just the way literature works. It's a second order, another level use of language that I think we can cultivate a habit. We can cultivate a habit that it becomes second habit to us. Look, I was not trained in Yoruba. I took some classes in Yoruba at Ife when I was an undergraduate. That's it. But you train yourself to read it. It doesn't take a lot. Honestly, it doesn't.
You mentioned
Yeah.
Yes, we say here. You made this. I was the boss, you know. Well, that's it. I think that maybe you have the when it is.
Okay.
Or maybe more experience for what you're from. That is what it takes.
Yeah.
Kind of translation that I have.
Yeah, I get a point. Yeah, you will see Fidi here there too.
Yeah, you see, I was going to mention that if you could understand what Fidi here means, then you could probably follow some distance. Because if you check Yoruba meta language for acting, okay, you watch acting vice chancellor. Adele, you find something like Adele vice chancellor. Okay, somebody who is holding position 4. But he used the word Fidi here, that is, just sit on the edge of the sit on the edge of the chair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for somebody who's not a native Yoruba speaker, that's very, very difficult to first say, what does this mean? And you will not find, these things have not yet entered modern Yoruba dictionaries.
Good enough.
Excuse me, until now, no, they have not.
Oh, but Fidi here, Ijoba interim government, Ijoba Shoneko was Fidi here. Actually, that's what I was following. Shoneko, and then Shoneko was Ijoba Fidi here. That's the way Yoruba radio stations called him. And Fidi here was also to emphasize precarity. You're sitting precariously when you are Fidi here. So, and acting, okay, you see a lot, all right. I was trying to
I want to it is advisable that you get the Yoruba meta language. It will assist you a lot. And then it will make the text to be easier for especially Yoruba students. Like we that are teachers in the university, we may want to use that book, but somehow it's like the words there are somehow ambiguous. It's not easy to understand. The generation of students that we have now, deeply, like in the old days. So we need to at least put them into consideration. Yes, sir. I thought to say
Thank you. My name is AdelekeAdeeko from Lagos State University. Okay, yeah. My name is AdelekeAdeeko from Lagos State University. I want to ask a question, sir, but I quickly want to respond to what Doc has said here. I think word formation processes have accounted for some of the ideas that Doc has lifted, coinages, hybridization, and all of that. So I think it obtains in every other literature too. So if we are asking for maybe a special consideration for texts that come in Yoruba language, we may not also be trying to grow the language itself. Some of these ideas can help to grow the language. It's like Prof. also has said with the example of IDEA and so on and so forth. My question to you, sir, is that you talked about tone. Now, I think I understand that you said tone without the diacritic. There are some tones that you don't need to use diacritic to achieve. I wouldn't know if it's you. I think it was you that said that, oh, the prof on. So it's okay. I would like that to be clarified. You know, it said just like the tone used in the language without the diacritic. So I don't understand that clearly. Maybe he wants to throw more light.
So he didn't say that. He didn't say that. It's not me
the word tone in the sense of that of words, but it meant intonation. That was what he was saying. So I don't understand. I didn't understand him the way you understood him. So I believe that tone is tone. There is no doubt about that. And the debate about whether you should put the marks or not put the marks, I think that's already sealed. That's settled. So it meant intonation. That's what it meant.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I can respond to that quickly. You know, I was speaking to not necessarily in the way we to mark. I'm not saying that we should not put the dots underneath our vowels, nor put the marks on top of them to show low tone, high tone, mid tone. But here I'm talking about a manner of speaking in literature whereby if you are reading a particular author, let me put it this way, that, you know, that tonality for me speaks to a kind of canonicity in Yoruba literature, whereby at the dense language, when you are reading people like Fagunwa, or you are reading Jeboda, or you are reading many of these early writers of Yoruba literature, there's a particular way they speak that is, so that tone, when you encounter it, if you know them, then you realize that this is what this person is trying to do here. And he has explained that by saying that it follows the tradition of Olanipekun. So I'm a writer. I write novels. When you read my novels, so you not but notice, that's not what you won't notice my my respect for Okediji in the ways I use my language. So because I respect Okediji and the way he writes, even though I write detective novels, so you know, there are two people for me to follow, Okediji and the other guy. Thank you, Kola Akinlade. Yeah, thank you, Kola Akinlade. But I find Akinlade not too pleasing to me, and I like the way Okediji will write, you know, the way it creates mystery. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. And he has explained that for him, that tonal inflection comes from the fact that he's following Olanipekun's song. So that's what I was talking about, not necessarily about to marking the vowels, you know, O, and E. So not that one.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I will first like to commend Professor AdelekeAdeeko. One, in the area of what is that he has introduced into that translation, as in the coinage which Dr. Shueton talked about, and that actually attested to the fact that Yoruba, any language is a living language, and in a way, for a living language, there will always be what we call change or changes over the time. Okay, then I commended you for that. Thank you, sir. Then what I want to take into consideration is that I want to go back to Professor Akinwumi in his own translation, whenever, or let me say, when he was about to translate The King and the Dead Horseman, and equally Ake Nigba, the two, when he translated and he was providing a kind of information on them, he wrote, he said, each time he is reading Soyinka, the sound behind it, let me read it. He said, each time I read some Soyinka works, especially Death and the King's Horseman, and Ake, the Year of Shaibu, I hear mainly sounds of the original sentence, mentally translated at the back of the author's mind. Soyinka writes very good Yoruba in marvelous English. So that was, and equally, he said that about Ashibe as well. Now, about in his book, in a book edited by Akinyemi and the Falola, that is Emerging Perspective. Equally, when Professor Akinwumi was interviewed, he referred to the likes of Femi, Osofisan, and others that they write good Yoruba in English, right? And then on that, he has written a paper which refers to as not translation, but retrieval, right? So what he's saying now is that it's not that is writing, is translating Ida Soyinka when he was writing Iku Olokun Esin, and equally when he wrote Ake Nigba. What he was doing was retrieving the original Yoruba language from the English, which Soyinka or Osofisan or the so-called writer have done. Then I want to ask a question: how do you see this idea of retrieval? Then how do you conceive that? Though we have seen that you have, at least in a way, being creative, we cannot translate directly. It will lose the creativity and then what we call what can make people to be attracted to the book. Then how do you see the idea of a retrieval, which Akinwumi Shola has in a way talked about? Thank you.
Very good question. Using go back to this 1992 essay on research in African literature on language use, long time ago. He has been using that, and I gave a talk last week on Osofisan's 77th birthday, where I counterposed Ishola and Esson. And Esson and Ishola were doing two things. Esson said, like I already explained my reason of Esson and why I chose him over Ishola. Ishola was even thinking that there's something beyond language. It's not just a literal language. If it's just language, then what do you have to retrieve? Ishola was more or less saying that there is something beyond language. So it's that beyond language that it's not just literal words. Even if you read it, the way I read Ishola is striving for something beyond language. If it's just language, all you need to do is learn Yoruba, then read Osofisan and enjoy him in English. Or learn Yoruba and enjoy Death and the King's Horseman in English. Most already know Yoruba, all the Yoruba references. But there is something beyond. And it's that beyond that I believe is not just retrieval. That beyondness cannot be retrieved. The idea of when we tell a story, and I will round up to be very brief. When in Yoruba language, horse, C-A-U-S-E, is Idi, which is bottom on which you sit. And Ori is the head. How does Ori relate to Idi and Ese, Iwaju and Eyi? How does that relate to narrate the structure of progression in a story? So it's that beyond cannot be retrieved. That difference is radical, and there is nothing that you can do about it. And once you translate, one infects the other. What Ori is that what Kolera Kolej is? I almost said that, but deliberately as a structure, but I moved back a little from saying that. Because that will require a lot of explanation. That's a block, just like a headless block. You know what that means in Yoruba? So how do but Ori follows Ori's path. How do you translate that into narrative progression? How does that affect characterization? How does that affect naming? How does that affect place? I think that it's that element that cannot be retrieved. Those elements, those differences cannot be retrieved, although Ishola wanted it. So on one hand, I know what Ishola was saying. On the other, I think the retrieval can be happened. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we must go back to the online commentators because I see two people with their hands up. Umiz has a hand up for a good 15 minutes. Can we ask Umi to come back in?
Thank you, ma'am. My question was going to be, well, thank you, Professor AdelekeAdeeko, for everything you've said, and it makes it clearer and more, it makes it clearer. But my question is, I'm more into literature, So I didn't really care for I care for the language, technicalities of it, but I was also more interested in how I can literally translate it. But then what keeps coming back to me is the orthography. Okay, so there are many errors with the orthography, and I tried to unsee them, but there were too many of them. So I was going to ask that, what happened with the copy editor? 1, 2, is there going to be a revision soon? Because if I have students that I would be recommending these books to, these books, yes, as error-free as possible, if we have to be using them as reading materials in the class. So I wanted to ask if there will be a revision soon. Thank you.
That I can answer briefly. In terms of revision, I cannot tell because it depends on how much they sell. If they don't sell, I don't think this is going to go into second edition, unfortunately. And was there a copy editor? Yes. There was vetting over, and they even misspelled my name. You know that? If you look at the Yoruba cover, there's a class where my name is misspelled. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, they misspelled my name. At least I know how to spell my name. So the question is, it's not just copy editing. In between, I do not know what happened. I corrected over and over. You need to see my PDF corrections. Somehow they still get me. When I saw my own name misspelled, I just what am I supposed to do? At least I should know how to write my name correctly. So I really apologize for that, but I am not saying it's a bad. I hate it when I see that in printed books. That's right. And that's one of the attitudes that I think we have towards producing texts in our languages. We tend to just quickly rush it through and not pay attention, and I've expressed my displeasure, total displeasure with the publisher. He knew that. If there's a second edition, fortunately it's all digital, so it's easy to correct. Very, very easy. I can do that on PDF. But again, whether it's going to reprint, that's beyond me. That depends on sales. So I really like the point you are making. You are right. You are right.
Great. Commiserations from the publishers. Shego, I think you wanted to come back in.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Baba. I have a question, but a kind of two-part question. So, AdelekeAdeeko. So, Roland Barthes talks about the death of the author. So, and I'm still trying to, grasp with the idea of you are not the author, Professor Osofisan is still the author, because definitely we have two texts here. So one is in English, one is in Yoruba, two different languages. So, and I don't know how that applies to you not being the author of the translated work. So, and that is what I call part of the politics of, adaptation and translation on one part. So, because I feel like once Professor Osofisan is done writing that book, so the author is dead. So every one of us, we are free to do whatever we need to do, or we can do with that text claimed by Roland Barthes. So that is one part. The second part has to do more with this notion of sociology of Yoruba text and literature by Adebisi Ogunshina. Professor Ogunshina said that, Yoruba text must carry the sociology of the writer, their experiences and all of that. So my question is, how much of that, do you infuse in your translation when you're translating this work? So at what particular point did you try to include your own personal experiences, into the translation? Thank you.
If I can answer the second part first, I gave the example of pidgin. There is no pidgin English, there is no pidgin Yoruba. I substituted Ijebu for pidgin as a way, again, which is also my own criticism of the Yoruba literary tradition, where none of your dialects, none of your variants of English rarely get into the archive. They rarely get into the written document. as Professor Baba will attest, she did that big book on drama in Yoruba. When you see regional speakers of regional varieties of Yoruba, they're always there as jokers, as comic relief. You can, from even until today, even in Nollywood Yoruba, when Baba Ijesha comes in, you know it's going to provide comic relief. Baba Ijebu, he sells for and you see all those, don't even talk of Ekiti people, they are upland country geeks. So that's my way, one of my way of revenge, because the revenge of the regional speakers of Yoruba dialect is by putting Ijebu right there at the, so that's one way you could say, I'm trying to reflect my experience, and two, I'm making a criticism of the dominance of the Oyo-centric tradition, the Oyo-centric in Yoruba literary tradition. Then the other question on authorship, I would rather not go with Roland Barthes here. I will go with Olabi Yai. So what I mean by that is that not that Benu is not important or inferior, but that Benu, the translation is part of Benu. And Benu is also a Benu. So you see the play on what that to Benu, you are still bear something. You are crafting something by well, you are just crafting with the mouth. So I'd rather go with Jai in this case than that. We can take this option, but we'll discuss it permanently. You know that.
Yes, you've produced a new text, a fantastic one, getting richer by the minute.
Yeah.
We're out of time. I think Timi Tokpe wants to say one more word, and then we have to close.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you very much, once again for this opportunity. Now, actually, when I read through the Yoruba version of the text, I told myself that honestly, I would not have forgiven myself if I had only limited myself to just the English version, leaving out the Yoruba version. I came across so many expressions and what have you, that I found somewhat interesting. One of such expressions, for instance, is the word error. I mean, dodo error.
Error.
I was trying to rack my brain around what could that mean. But thank God that Prof actually took time to explain that it actually refers to irony. Yeah, but there's this phrase, caption, that I would like Prof to talk about shortly before we actually close, where it says, if you bori itumo. There's a particular portion of the so I'm trying to figure out what Prof actually means in that portion. Thank you.
I think refers to a short part of your ìṣàlàyé iṣẹ́ olùtúmọ̀ níbẹ̀rẹ̀. Ipe nínú ìtàn yìí ìfihàn, exposing, showing, direct presentation, outstrips hermeneutics, as it were, outstrips interpretation. The book doesn't want to interpret for you. The book shows it to you. The example shirt or car, everybody knows that the VC is in trouble. But yeah, just a second. But our pressmen, people keep commentators on our pressmen so blatantly our pressmen come on your photo, or repair to VC. So if you have here, we all of people over 2 men. I want to carry to a kind of 2 men for us. Into 2 on the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks to the live audience and the online audience, our brilliant commentators, and our fantastic responder. Really great.
Thank you,
so much. Close now.